Okay, people, we get into Mark chapter 16 again. I want to take you to verse 15. And Jesus said to his disciples, bear in mind, this is after the resurrection, the great excitement of the risen Christ being amongst them. And there's a buzz amongst the disciples, and the disciples saying, this is so cool, Jesus, that you are back with us. So cool, Jesus, that now we've seen you die, we've seen you rise. We know that you are who you say you are. Jesus, this is going to be so cool from now on. And then Jesus breaks the news to them to say, guys, you're right, it is cool. Everything else is wonderful. But here's the news. I'm leaving. I'm going back to where I came from. Can you imagine the consternation in the disciples when they thought, what is life without Jesus? How are we going to do this without him? He's been our life. He's been our purpose. And even more so now, after he's risen from the dead, this is so, man, what are we going to do? And then Jesus says to them, you know how God's plan was that I should come, Jesus says, to redeem the world and to die so that people could reunite with God and get to heaven again. The plan continues. And the disciples are saying, hey, Jesus, without you, what kind of plan have we got? And Jesus probably would have smiled, and he said to his disciples, here is the plan. The plan is now in your hands. The plan was in God's head, now it's in your hands. Go into all the world and preach the good news to all creation. And the disciples would have said, Jesus, what do you mean by that? Aren't you going to do that? Jesus, we've watched you do that for the last number of years. You mean we got to do that stuff? And Jesus said, yep, this is the plan. And I'm sure or maybe Peter would have come and said, hey, Jesus, I've got a better plan. I know that's your plan, Jesus, and that's cool. We respect that's your plan. But I've got a better plan, Jesus. Why don't you do it? You've got supernatural power. You are who you are. You are the Son of God. You are the Messiah. You are Jesus, man. Why don't you just do this? And Jesus would have responded to Peter and said, Peter, that's your job. The plan of God that was once in God's head is now very clearly in your hands and in your feet and in your mouth. You go and preach the good news to all nations. Now, people, nothing has changed. If Jesus were here today, he would be telling you to do the same thing. He'd be telling you, I've done my bit. I've redeemed the world. I've created opportunity for people to come to Jesus and to come to me and to get back to God again and to go to heaven one day. But you got to go and tell people so that they get to know this. I identify with Peter, and I think, God, if you are who you say you are, why would you choose us? Surely, for goodness sake, you have a better plan at putting this whole thing and the responsibility into people like me. Jesus, you got to have a better plan. Jesus, what's your plan B? And Jesus said, there is no plan B. You 12 disciples are my plan for redeeming the world. What kind of mission is that? You, Peter, James, John, Matthew, you, all of you, the plan is now that you go and redeem the world. And then if you look for the words of encouragement, you find them at the last book in Matthew, last few verses where Jesus said, don't panic, guys, I will be with you even to the end of the age. And then their minds must have thought, well, Jesus, you said you're going away. What do you mean you're going to be with us? You can't do both. You can't go away and be with us. Jesus, what do you mean? And Jesus, again, with a smile, would have said, you'll see what I mean. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you know what, people, isn't it crazy that God puts his plan into the hands of people like us, into the hands of people who kind of fail quite a bit. People have a bias towards sinful behavior. People have a bias towards fear. And Jesus puts the beautiful gospel of good news into our hands and says, will you please now go and share that which you have been given with the people around you. You don't have to save the world. You just have to tell the world, and Jesus will do the rest. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, maybe tomorrow or the next day, but it's exciting that God's plan is now in your hands. Go and tell all of creation. There's the all again. Not just those people and those people and these people. All of creation. God, every time we see this word all, I'm infatuated because I know there's a deep implication behind that. We'll talk about that another time. Guys, have a fantastic day and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.